and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today, as usual, we are in my sewing corner. I am bringing you a sewing project. I am using some really early stash fabric, so we'll talk about the fabric first. This is a quilting cotton, actually, from Rifle Paper Co. I find that their quilting cottons work well for me for garments, but you have to be a little bit particular in what you sew with them. So I have this here. It's forget-me-nots, which are some of my favorite. It's a little darker going into fall, winter situation. And yeah, I actually remember I bought this. So if you haven't been around here forever, I started sewing actually just before the pandemic. So I got my machine literally at the beginning of March, and then by mid-March, everything was closed. Sewing machines were harder to find. And I actually started sewing the October before the pandemic with some simple quilting projects. During the pandemic, to support some local fabric shops, I did pick some stuff up, and this is actually one of the prints that I picked up. So this is some of the earliest fabric from my stash that I actually acquired. Of course, I have older fabric because I have vintage fabrics, but I'm really excited to finally use this guy. For the pattern, I'm deciding to go with the 70s, which is a little bit later for me, but I really like, I'm thinking I'm going to do dress number 2 with the short sleeves. I will say with a quilting cotton, I hate a quilting cotton long sleeve, but I think for poof sleeves, it actually holds really nice volume. So I'm going to do the poof sleeve here. We'll see where the skirt actually hits me. This might be a little bit shorter than I want, but I think that would be good for me. And then my last plan here, which I have to decide for my lace stash, my thought is I'm actually going to do the lacy neckline they show with the lacy cuffs, because I think this fabric would look really, really stunning with some bright white lace up around the neckline and on the cuffs. So that's the plan for today. This is a size 14 from the 70s, and it is a bust 36, so I should not need to make any changes. The only change I might make will be on the cuff, as my bicep tends to be bigger than whatever the average thing is, but that's the beauty of sewing. You can make things fit you. I went to a store the other day and tried stuff on, and like literally nothing fits my biceps, and I was like, thank God I sew. I can get things that fit my arms and don't fit my body, or vice versa. So feeling very thankful for having developed this skill over the last 5 years or so. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one, and I think it's going to be a really cute dress, and I'm excited to finally tackle this fabric in my stash that has been here for so long. So with that, we're just going to hop straight into cutting out my fabric. And we are off to the races here. So I am laying out all of my pattern pieces, of course. This is actually not a directional print for once, so that's nice. I feel like I've been on a bit of a directional kick, so it's nice to have the ability to place willy-nilly. However, I still usually try to place directionally because all sorts of things can be impacted if I don't. And yeah, this is straightforward. I don't even really need to add any extra ease or anything like that. This basically fits my measurements as is. I'm just cutting everything out and transferring marks and all of that good stuff. And here is where I will remind you that I do have both a Patreon and a Ko-Fi, where you can go over on Patreon and support me monthly if you would like. I give you early access to videos. And then of course you can also just buy me a one-time coffee on Ko-fi. I always really appreciate that as well. I mentioned this in my year wrap-up channel, and I'll mention it again this year, but I usually actually pay 82 cents an hour to be here. I don't really make money off of this channel, so I always appreciate any financial support I receive. And with that, we are done and down to our last little bit of cutting things out, which is the very long tie strings that go at the back. And with that, let's jump into the construction. So I decided to use my strip for doing the interfacing for both like the back and the shoulders and the neckline and all of that good stuff. I could have cut out a piece, but I've just gotten now so used to using the strip interfacing that I am very resistant to using anything else. First thing I am doing here is sewing. There's only a couple small darts in this because it's princess seamed in the front, but in the back it does have those 2 little darts in the neckline to give you room for your shoulder blades to move. There are also 2 waistline darts here. And with that done, I can press open the seam. I did this in basting because this is actually where the zipper is going to go. And I needed the darts done to do this, or I didn't need them. I like to have the darts done first while the pieces are completely separate and easiest to flatten. And I'm going back to the assembly type where the last thing I sew is the side seams, so I can adjust the fit of this garment much easier. So I've also actually sewn up the middle seam of the back skirt panels, basted the part where the zipper goes in up at the top, and then I'm just pinning together more layers here. And with spooky watching on here in the corner, I am real quick attaching the pockets using a 3/8 inch seam regular seams are 5/8. And I'm also trying a understitching method here to keep the pockets hopefully more in place. In general, with my pieces, I get constantly frustrated at the pockets popping out. So we're gonna try this understitching and see if it gets my pockets to stay more the way I would like them to. And I have now attached the waist to the skirt. So now I'm going to put in the zipper here, going all the way around sewing wise. And for me to actually start work on the front bodice, I first need to sew the ties that are going to get sandwiched between the princess seams, which I will then trim with my pinking shears so that way there's not like a harsh edge that you can see inside. And I'm going to get this turned inside out. I'm just using my fingers because in this case it's wide enough that that's pretty easy, so I don't feel like I need an additional tool at all. And then I'm just flattening everything in the way I want it before using my iron to press it completely flat. And now I can pin together my princess seam with the tie in the seams like sandwiched together. And I'm just going to be easing in the bodice. This actually has quite a steep curve to it because it is a little bit more like empire style, which I find in general, I think those princess seams are a little bit curvier. And yeah, this just like takes time to ease in. And then once that's done, I have clipped some things, and then I'm going to go in with my pinking shears and cut down my line of stitching here to help it press a lot nicer, hopefully. I had also put in another row of stitches to help ease things together. And because this curve is steep, I am wrestling this onto my sewing ham, and then I am pressing the seam open. And here I have attached the skirt after sewing all of those skirt seams to the bodice, and then I am just pinking that. Pinking is my finishing for this project because this is a very tightly woven cotton that I'm not worried about fraying. And with that, I am matching up the shoulders and pinning them together of the dress so that way I can begin the neckline, which means I am also going to be pinning together the shoulder seams of my facing. And then here I am going around and stitching the edge of the facing down so that way we'll have a clean and finished edge here. And once I have sewn my facing to the neckline of the garment, I am now understitching that facing to just help with the turning process. I won't do that over like the sweetheart part of the neckline, but I do think it's helpful to do it on where it's a little bit straighter so that way I can get that nice crisp edge that I would like. And then here I have gathered a few different trims that I am trying on the neckline to decide what I actually want on the neckline. I decided on a gorgeous floral trim that I've actually had in my stash for quite a few years. I thought these bows were cute, but they just weren't exactly what I was looking for. Here you also see me using my phone to document it. I'll play the bunch of trims out and take photos on my phone and then flip through them to actually look at what I like the best. Alrighty folks, I'm just hand sewing on some lace. We are over here in Media on My Mind. This is where I talk about what I am watching, reading, all the things, just so you can, in case you need any recommendations or anything like that. First thing is I am back on a documentary kick, so I have been watching my way through some documentaries by HBO. I think HBO does better documentaries than a lot of others because Netflix for me feels very like edited YouTube video, but I think HBO has just a lot higher quality documentaries on it overall. I watched The Mortician last night. I watched all 3 episodes in one sitting. Very disturbing, very upsetting, very interesting. It's about a family of morticians that are participating in unethical disposal of bodies. Documentary was super well done in my opinion. They did talk to a lot of victims, which I think is always really important when it comes to documentaries like this, because it is ultimately the people impacted who should have the most voice. I mean, they did talk to one of the main criminals as well quite a bit. And it was really interesting because like, I think I am less attached to my body than some people, and less attached maybe to the body of loved ones than some people, but like listening to a mortician have those views is like pretty upsetting because your job as a mortician is to care for families and bodies in a way that they will pay you to, but like also in a careful, respectful way, right? Like even though I would not consider myself particularly attached to my loved ones' bodies, which is such a weird statement, I would be pretty horrified by that because it would have consequences in my family. Also, like, which for me is a non-factor, but for a lot of people there's religious consequences as well, and that's pretty horrifying. But yeah, it was a very well done documentary. Good twists and turns and things like that. But that's it as far as watching. Everything else is reading. I read Direct Descendant, which is a book, kind of a witchcraft book, kind of a horror book, sapphic romance novel thing, and I enjoyed the whole book. I actually will likely read it again someday. I liked the world. I liked It was like kind of like lighter horror. I'm mixed on horror. Sometimes I really enjoy horror, sometimes I don't. I think most even non-horror readers would be okay with it, but I guess I can't speak really to that as a horror reader. But yeah, I enjoyed the romance in it too, which we love because not all sapphic romances are particularly great. Again, this was like reading a straight love story. There was no particular reason they needed to be queer, which is always great. We love non-tragic lesbian books, sapphic books. So definitely recommend reading that one. Next one, I finished up Eat the Ones You Love, which is another sapphic horror book, kind of romance. I really liked it. I liked the premise. It was a very, to me, gay premise, but super weird, very weird book for me in a very good way. Wasn't my favorite ending from a book, but wasn't a bad ending either. I just thought it could have ended better, but it was still an enjoyable read. Honestly, I really enjoyed the characters and kind of, there was just like a lot of, in a great way, like inner insecurity kind of being talked about that I enjoyed. I mean, I think most of us have certain insecurities, so it was an enjoyable read on that front too. And like just like an interesting exploration of, as an adult, being back in your hometown and where you grew up and kind of the different places and things that makes you feel. Also, I just got back from a trip to Colorado, and when I'm in the area, I like to find some sort of book on history or whatever of the area I'm in, and as a result, I ended up reading a book called Tomboy Bride. I thought was really, really good. You kind of never know what you're getting when you pick up a book. In this case, Tomboy Bride is referring to the name of the mine where the man she married was working. It was the Tomboy Mine in Telluride. I definitely recommend this book if you were a fan of like Little House on the Prairie or things like that. I feel like it's kind of a similar voice and kind of a similar vibe, but a little bit later and more about mining than farming. I really enjoyed it, and it was a pleasant surprise because I picked it up and I was like, there is a 50% chance I will not be able to finish this book because it will be so boring. But it was delightful, and I had never heard about it before. If you like autobiographies of kind of like, I wouldn't say like everyday people, because she was college educated and so was her husband. So they were higher class, and she definitely had a low opinion of unions as a result. But it was still an interesting read nonetheless of all the things. For me, having grown up in Colorado, and actually I felt like I had connections to all 4 places she discusses in the book. First is in Telluride, next is in a place in Canada that's on the Puget Sound, which I live in Seattle on the Puget Sound, so it was kind of fun to read that. And then she goes over to Elk River, which is kind of close to where I have some family that live out there. It ends in Leadville, which Leadville is like a very formative place for me. I went camping there as a kid for the first time, and I feel like it was the first time I really realized how much I enjoyed like being outside and wildlife and wildflowers, and like, I don't know, it was a very formative experience for me. So it was fun to read kind of really formative experiences for her as well. It was a really enjoyable book, and again, if you enjoy Little House on the Prairie, I would recommend Tomboy Bride. Every once in a while I'll pick up a history book from a region that I'm traveling and I'll be like, bleh. I try to either find like a historical fiction, an autobiography, or kind of like a lore book. I am gonna reread this book actually. By reread, I mean re-audiobook it. Hear me out for a second. This is one of the most impactful books to my life personally that I have read in a while, and it's gonna sound weird, but it's actually the memoir of Parvati, who is a Survivor player, and I would say reality TV star. But even if you are not a fan of these things, I highly recommend reading this book because I feel like she talks a lot about becoming comfortable as a woman, like not people pleasing and not fawning, and like learning to embrace the villainous parts of yourself, which I think a lot of villainous parts of women is just like women. So she talks so much about her journey with people pleasing, and I really related to a lot of it. She talked about divorce, I think, in a really helpful way if you're going through one. Honestly, I kind of like got the book for the bit. I really enjoyed her in Survivor and all her other reality TV exploits, and so I was like, you know what, I'll read her memoir. But I didn't expect it to be as insightful and great as it is. It like truly took me by surprise, and it might be one of my top reads of the year, actually, and maybe even ever. So highly recommend if you struggle with people pleasing or even like liking yourself and like being selfish sometimes. I really do recommend picking up this book even if you have no idea who she is. I think there's a lot of lessons you can learn from it that apply to people who aren't on reality TV, especially especially women. That is it for media on my mind. I still have a lot of hand sewing to get done here. Actually, by the end, I will probably be done with a 2-season, 12-episode documentary. So, you know, always watching more media here on this channel. I feel like definitely if you're looking for some media to escape the madness. Actually, I think everything I listed I really enjoyed. So take those recs and escape this world with them. And yeah, I will catch you once I am done sewing down all of this lace. And before I get back to sewing, we have to stop and admire Spooky. Look at how cute she is. She's all curled up, yawning and glaring at me for interrupting her sleep. And here I wanted to show you guys a little bit more on how I sew on trim. So a lot of people always ask me why I hand sew. I like to hand sew because it's the easiest way to have an invisible stitch of your trim. If I sewed a line through this, you would see the line pretty clearly because this trim wobbles quite a bit. For a trim that has a straight edge, it's a different story, but this does not. So I am just like going around basically the outside of the trim. I'll do first the top, and then here I am going around the bottom, just anchoring all of those different points that are likely to kind of peel up. I also do it this thoroughly so that way this washes better and will require less pressing post-washing. I am always looking for longevity out of my clothes, and hand sewing takes a long time and is pretty tedious. However, I just find I get a little bit more longevity out of it than I would if I didn't hand sew. And then here I am sewing up the side seams of my dress, which is a very exciting moment. Also, you can see the bedazzling on my machine is slowly growing. I am only allowing myself an hour and a half of bedazzling a night to not trigger any chronic pain. But I'm feeling very excited about the whole thing. With the side seams together, it's time to take a look at the sleeves. So I'm first running my gathering stitches both on the head of the sleeve as well as along the hem of the sleeve, because this is kind of a double puffed sleeve. Some puff sleeves taper into a straight edge, some taper into or are gathered into a cuff, which is what this one is. And here I am gathering it into the cuff. Typically you sew side seams up and side seams of the cuff up, and then you ease the sleeve into the cuff. But here they actually have you leave everything flat, so I thought I'd give it a try and see how I liked it. And I did feel like I was able to get more even gathers doing it this way. I was a fan and it worked for the way that this project works. And it made this kind of like pressing part a little bit easier. I had already pre-pressed the cuff anyway, but this was definitely an easier way to like kind of continue that press. And then I can pin up my side seams and sew all the way down through the cuff. And then I'm pressing that underarm seam open, and then I will press, of course, the cuff back up and in place. And then here I am hand stitching this down. You could always do this by machine. I just prefer by hand because I think it's a little bit more invisible, and I am not a good top stitcher. It would actually take me longer to top stitch this accurately and have it look nice on the front than it does for me to hand stitch, but that's just because I'm a pretty quick and proficient hand sewer. And then once that's done, I'm pinning the trim around the cuffs, and then I again hand stitch this down off camera. Now I get to put the sleeve head on the sleeve. And then I will use a bias binding here, double fold, to clean up that seam. I prefer this over leaving this just plain pinked because I think this just gives a little bit more security and a little bit less of a sensory nightmare. And with that, I'm going to move on to the hem. I plan on making this relatively mini for myself, but I don't actually want to take off any length in case I decide that something more short is not for me. So after I finished up the edge, I am putting in some stitches so that way I can ease this into place, which I'll show you what that means in a second. So I believe I shortened this by 3.5 inches, which is quite a bit for a hem in general, but especially a hem that is on a curve. So I put in those gathering stitches that you saw so I could ease together these lines and press everything flat and have it be perfectly eased where it doesn't leave those weird wrinkles and points at the bottom of your hem. I find this method to be really successful. I learned it from a sewing pattern at some point and it became my adapted, tried and true method because, like I said, I like to leave a deep hem because I want to be able to make it shorter or longer depending on like how my life changes, and I am also thinking of the future life of this garment, and somebody who is taller than me might want to one day purchase it, and this will give them more bandwidth and room to move the hem down. But with that, we are getting pretty close. I am hand stitching down this hem, and for my very last step, I am sewing on my label because I am very proud of this garment and I want to make sure it bears my maker's mark. And with that, we are ready for the reveal, so let's hop to it. All right, you've seen the reveal. I found a very beautiful, still blooming group of flowers for it. I was pretty excited about that. I originally was aspiring to find something very fall leaf themed, but all of me does not super love fall, so when I saw all those pretty flowers, I said, you know what, we're not doing fall leaves for my fall dress, we are doing fall flowers, and that's what we did. But yeah, as usual, I'm gonna go through my 3 segments here. I have cost breakdown, and then I have final thoughts on this project, and lastly, I have my Hope Help segment, so that is where we're headed. First off, I have my cost breakdown. Because I bought this fabric so long ago during the pandemic, and I think on sale, this fabric was actually quite affordable, coming out at $45.08. This kind of surprised me because this type of fabric is definitely more expensive now. But you know, inflation has been real, the tariffs are real, like a lot of different things that have priced fabric up have been happening over the last 5 years, so I shouldn't be surprised, I guess, that this fabric is that much cheaper 5 years ago. But it definitely did kind of shock me. And then as far as notions, I used a zipper, some thread, a label, and then I used the lace, which I calculated out at about $12 worth of lace because I bought that dead stock on a bolt. All of the notions for this cost me $15.22. And then lastly, the pattern was free. I can't remember if someone sent me this pattern or if I got it in a box that somebody gave to me for free to sort through. So that brings my supply cost to $60.30, which is very exciting because that is not cheap by any means, but for a cotton dress with handmade details, and that is very nicely made, $60.30 is not too shabby. And the reason I mention that is because we talk about labor on this channel, and a lot of garments we wear and that we can buy in stores are made using unethical labor. While we cannot be perfect, of course, because of the world we live in, it is good to have awareness around the costs of what we buy. And I don't just mean the financial costs, I mean the human rights costs. And there are a lot of brands out there with a lot of human rights violations going on, or they're like not paying their workers, all sorts of different things going on. Like I actually think back to the pandemic when I think about this, about how many big corporations just didn't ever pay their garment workers for all the things that were produced in 2020. And all of that is like very concerning and is a huge reason why I sew, but also a huge reason I like to highlight labor on this channel. So as far as how long this took me an hour and a half to cut. I mentioned this, I'm starting to just take longer cutting, and I think at this point it's because I'm trying to enjoy sewing and not rush through it. And so I'm just taking my time. And then the actual sewing part, so the machine to ironing board took me 6 hours and 45 minutes. And hand sewing was actually shockingly short given all the lace, but I feel like I've just gotten a lot more proficient in hand sewing on trims. So that took me only an hour and a half, brings me to a total of 9 hours and 45 minutes to make this garment, which is a little bit longer than some pieces now I think about it, which is probably because of the trim, but all not too shabby overall. And then here I multiply this by a living wage here in Seattle, which is reported to be $35.39, and that brings me to a labor total of $345.05, which means for me to sell this, make back my money, make back my labor, and pay like myself a living wage for that labor, I would have to sell this dress for $405.35. Oh! Thank you, Spooky. Spooky wanted to bring some emphasis to that, I guess. Okay. That scared me. I genuinely did not see that coming. You silly goose. Of course, I would not sell this for that amount of money because this is a hobby for me. This is for fun, but I just want us to think about what it means if your garment only costs $20. With that, we're done with the spreadsheet, and Spooky, now you're on my lap. Oh, that was such a big yell. You're so lovely. I love this. I wore it yesterday all day long. Super comfortable except for the tie in the back. This was actually a reminder of why I typically don't go for tons of things with ties in the back, is because when you're sitting in them and driving, they're kind of annoying. If you're sitting on the couch in them, they're kind of annoying. So while I love the flexibility of a tie, I actually think I might skip it next time I make this dress and just nip the waist in a little bit more. The flexibility for me is not worth the discomfort, especially since I've started to sew things with the side seams last, which means I can switch it up if I feel like I need it to be either a bit tighter or a bit looser. So for me, the ties weren't quite it, because yeah, I feel like I haven't worn a ton of things with ties, and I suddenly remember why. You're so cute. Look at that little face. But I will say, mission accomplished with this. I was trying to make something that I felt a little sexier in. I don't make tons of like sexy clothing here. That's not really my thing necessarily, but like I'm in an era where I feel like I've lost some touch with my sensuality and I want to have that feeling again. So I'm trying some shorter hemlines, some deeper cuts. I think we all go through different phases in life where our clothes need to serve different things for us. And I'm entering a phase where I would like a little bit more things that show a little bit more skin and then I can go out on dates in and feel just like really good. And I think this is a super cute outfit for that. It's a little bit shorter and it shows off my legs in a way I like. I've talked a little bit before about how I'm a little bit self-conscious about my legs because I don't know, we all have our things. The other thing too is I also feel like this is very nice on my cleavage, which we love. And I hopefully think it is still subtly enough that I won't attract men and I can continue to not catch the male view and instead attract the ladies. It is kind of funny to go a little bit short for fall, but here we are. It was what I wanted to do, so it is what I did. And this is your reminder that you can make anything any hem length. I definitely have a couple patterns that I'm eyeing making a little bit shorter than the pattern calls for. And yeah, I recommend it. Oh, as far as how I made this, I think this is really well made. I'm just reaching a point that I feel like most of the things I made, I'm proud of the quality, and there's like not actually any butts on the end of that, which is nice. I did the understitching on the pockets this time, and I do think that's made a difference in the way the pockets. I'm a lot happier, but I also placed my pockets a lot higher in this one, which I think for this makes sense because it's an empire waist. I don't think that will always work, but I did like the pocket placement and the way everything worked there. I do like the cuffs. You will notice in the reveal, they're probably technically a little bit loose. I did add width to them, I think at like 2 inches, like actually quite a bit. But I'm happy with that because if my arms feel restricted, I get overwhelmed really easily, and I definitely do not feel my best self when that happens. Like even this dress here, it's a little restrictive for me, which it's elastic so I could loosen it up. That is something that I have found to be important for me. I think this pattern is super cute and I really like it, and I'm so glad I waited, I guess, I was looking at my stash and like I keep dates of everything that I bought. This is actually the first fabric in my stash. So this was amongst some of the first fabric I ever bought, and I think that's kind of cool too. And so I'm happy that it is bringing me into a slightly different phase of life, and I'm pretty happy with it. I just overall feel great. And that brings us to our last segment, which is Hope Helps. And here is where I'm going to be transparent with y'all. It has been slightly hellish 2 weeks in my life. So I did not have the energy to sort through bad news to find good news. So we're doing it a little different today. And I'm going to talk about wins in my life and things that I'm excited about. And hopefully that is maybe helpful for you guys to either inspire or encourage. One thing that I was excited about is I exchanged numbers with my neighbor. I have a few neighbors that I know, but we don't ever exchange numbers, and I finally exchanged numbers with one. And I have been working pretty hard on being like an active participant in my neighborhood. That's kind of out of my comfort zone. I like to be pretty choosy about who I spend time around and who knows me, but it's been really rewarding to get to know my neighbors more. And my neighbor actually saved me from a big meltdown the other day. I'm a little bit on edge right now because I just have a lot going on, and so I've been kind of easily upset and spooky. Unfortunately, one night threw up in my bed in the middle of the night, and she made it through all the layers. The life of a cat. This is why you get a mattress protector when you have a cat. And I needed to wash every single layer in my bed, and I woke up I slept the rest of the night on the couch because I just couldn't deal with it in the moment. So I slept poorly, and then I got everything ready to put in the laundry, and I needed to do a bunch of loads because I had to wash literally all of my bedding. And then I realized I had no quarters. Then I had a bit of a meltdown, and then I was like, you know your neighbors. So I texted her, she gave me some quarters, and it really reminded me that is what you don't just build community to like help you do it to help other people and like in general have more fulfillment. But it just felt really nice to feel kind of like cared for by a stranger. She gave me a bunch of quarters and she was just like, I'm so sorry. And like, it was really nice to have that bit of human connection at what was like kind of a hard moment for me. And of course, that's like not the worst thing that happened. That is not why I was crying. It's just, I'm having a bit of one of those times where something happens and you cry, even though that is something that would not make you cry normally. It also just felt nice because I've been putting so much effort in my life to have connections within my community, whether that's neighbors or friends or anything like that. So it felt just really nice to kind of feel some of the benefit, because it can just feel tiring to be putting a lot of effort and energy out all the time the way I have been. And it's been really worth it and rewarding, but it isn't my natural state. I am not an extrovert in any way, shape, or form. I am heavily introverted. It was just really nice and it made me feel really appreciative. It is why I encourage you guys to like just put yourselves out there. Is I think in general most people don't suck, and I think in general most people want to be helpful, and it like was encouraging for me to remind myself that I'm not just building community to be there for other people, but other people will show up for you. I was feeling just so grateful for that. That's exactly what I needed in that moment to just kind of like chill me out a bit. And otherwise, what's giving me hope is I have started acupuncture finally. I have had 4 of my medical team tell me that I really needed to try it, and I just didn't love the idea of being poked that much, so I was really resistant to it for a very long time. But one of my friends who had gone through acupuncture recently recommended an acupuncturist to me that I knew was on my insurance, so I was able to go, and it's been like game changing for me. I get almost 3 to 4 days of relief. I don't get down to 0 pain, but I sit at like a 1 or a 2, which is so good for me. I've been doing that, and it's been really helping me manage everything else going on in my life right now, because everything's just kind of feeling chaotic and bad, honestly. The fact that I kind of feel like I'm slowly getting a handle on my health and that I have at least like something that I know will give me relief for a few days has been really great and has given me a lot of hope that like I can like function more normally again. And also, it's been really nice. So I knew this time in my life was gonna be really stressful. I'm under really intense deadlines right now at my job. And I knew this was all coming, so I put tons of things in place for myself when I knew things were gonna start amp up. So I'm doing acupuncture and PT once a week. I'm really fortunate and my insurance covers a lot of it. I saved money to be able to pay for it, which is all hugely a privilege, but it's really helped me keep my health through what's been, again, really intense work time. I'm thankful for all the different things in my life that came together to teach me how to prepare for moments like this. It's also been really nice, like the past just 2 or 3 weeks, my fatigue has been terrible. I've been just feeling really overwhelmed all the time. And it's been really nice because the 2 medical professionals I see a week have both been very validating through that, because I do talk about that because it impacts my body. And they're like, we're hearing this from all our patients, we're seeing it in a lot of people's bodies right now. And it just kind of felt nice to know I wasn't alone. And if you're gonna take anything from this Hope Help segment, I would just like to remind you that you're not alone in all the things that you are feeling. And it is really easy to feel alone. It is especially easy to feel alone when you're on the internet reading through and doom scrolling through comments. But you're not alone in the way that you feel. A lot of people are feeling things right now, and it's been really hard. It's been really hard, and I feel like that's the understatement of the century. I know how hard I've been feeling things, and I feel like I have really healthy and good coping. So I know if I'm feeling things this badly, things are just really, really hard right now, and I just want to encourage you all that you're not alone. I'm sure there are people around you who feel similarly, and it's really important to foster these connections during that time, and it's really important to get out of comment sections. One of the worst things for my mental health the past few weeks has been when I see a TikTok or a video of something that I agree with and I open it up and I see all of these comments that are really negative about the thing I'm excited about, or just people fighting in general. I'm right now not allowed to look at comments, not on actually my own stuff. My own comments are relatively normal. I get an occasional weird comment, but I am a mute and block, no questions asked type of person, so they don't really bother me. It's really easy to feel super alone when you're online right now, but you're not. You're not alone. We're gonna get through this. There's so many different societies all over the world that have been through similar things like this. There's so much literature to read about getting through times like this, and this is your encouragement today to connect with someone. It can literally be so small, but we all feel better. Humans aren't meant to be isolated. We are meant to be in community. We're communal creatures, and that has been what's been giving me through such a hard time right now, because like I mentioned, work is really, really high stress for me right now. And then I also have quite a bit of stress going on in my personal life that's been also impacting my entire community. And then my health has been not great because of all of that. So things have just been rough. And yeah, and I just want to encourage you. And the other thing I want to encourage is create something, do something that makes you happy and gives you joy, and give your body rest and take care. Remember, we're headed into fall. We're headed into where things can be cozy and slower, and you don't need to do all the time. Our bodies in the natural rhythm are supposed to be kind of preparing to slow down and give your body the permission to do that. We do not need to be productive at all times, despite all the different messages that come at us telling us we need to. Personally, this last weekend, I laid on my couch. I watched a lot of TV. I didn't do very many productive things. I spent some times in some of my communities, and that's it. So give yourself space, give yourself time. Sorry, I guess that this is something very different for Hope Helps, but like I said, I'm acknowledging my own mental health and my own things, and I decided that looking through headlines for good things is just not something I need to be doing right now. I already know most of the bad things going on, and I don't need to see more things going on. And again, this is your reminder, I'm not calling you to tune out. Please do not tune out. We all need all of our voices and all of the different things we can all do to resist everything going on around us. Just remember, you aren't alone. But with that, spooky, I think it's time for me to go because I think I need a nap. I hope that this was somehow encouraging for you. It felt like a little wobbly, windy rant. Take good care of yourselves, especially right now. I mean, always, but I feel like something's in the air right now. So take good care of yourself and your loved ones. Connect with people, go outside, find things that give you joy. I will see you back next week for another video. I can't wait to see you then. I post every single Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Not every single. Occasionally, I miss one. You're so cute. If you're still here, subscribe, stick around. I'd love to have you. As always, you can support this video by giving it a thumbs up and commenting down below. I also have my Patreon and Ko-Fi, and I always appreciate anything over there. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Do you want to say bye, Spooky? Bye!